Good morning, everybody. We're going to do Math Review 3-7, and that's going to start us with writing an equation for division. So we're going to have to do something divided by something equals to something, remember? So this division gets you a star, and the equal sign gets you a star. Then we have to count everything that's inside our model. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wholes. So the first number in my dividend is a 6, and then I'm going to put my decimal because everything else is just going to be a decimal part. And let's look at how many tenths I have. I have 1, 2, 3 tenths. So there's going to be a 3 in the tenths place. And then I'm going to look at my hundreds. How many little squares do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 hundredths. So the 9 goes in the hundreds place. And that's my dividend. So that's going to be a star. Next, I need to see how many groups I'm dividing them into, and that's 3 groups. So my divisor is 3. And finally, my quotient. My quotient is 1, 2 wholes, and 1 tenth, and 3 hundredths. So if I put all that together, my answer is 2 wholes, and 1 tenth, and 3 hundredths. So that's my dividend for this problem. The key idea is an equation has an equal sign, and that's my final star. So that's a total of 6 stars for this problem. This next problem is probably the one that gave you a little trouble on the benchmark. So we're going to talk about it in detail, and there's going to be a lot of stars for this one today. So let's see if you can get as many as you can. Here we go. First, we're going to write an equation for multiplying decimals. So we know this part is going to be something times something equals to something. So the multiplication sign gets you a star, and the equal sign gives you a star as well. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you to look at the side of the model, this side right here. So this side right here is 2 wholes long. So that's going to represent the number 2 as a whole number. And that's going to give you a star if you label it like this. If you didn't get the star today, that's fine. Just go ahead and give yourself a marker with the red pen so you can see it and do it tomorrow. The next thing that I'm going to look at is down the side. We have 8 of these little tenths on there. So that's going to represent 8 tenths. And that's going to give you a star as well if you label it down the side. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to write the first factor, which is combining the 2 as a whole number and the 8 tenths. So now that we have that, we're going to go ahead and give yourself a star for that. The next thing that we're going to do is going to look at the top. The other factor is going to be along the other side of the model. So there's 3 wholes on the top. So that's going to be a star if you label it with a 3. And then you can count, or you can put that as part of the first factor, 3 and something. And then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these tenths. So it's going to be 5 tenths. And that's going to give you a star also if you labeled it on the model. And when you put the 3 and the 5 tenths together, you end up with the second factor, which is 3 and 5 tenths. So now that we have that, we're going to say, what is the product? What's the answer to our multiplication? And that's the easy part, I think. It's kind of confusing if you don't get it, but I'm going to explain it again so you can get it, okay? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wholes entirely. So what we're doing now to find the total answer is counting how many total models we have for the entire picture that we see. So there's 6 totals. So this orange area represents the whole number 6. So I would give you a star if you label it with a 6. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the yellow section. The yellow section, we already have 5 tenths on the top 5 tenths. And then we have another 5 tenths down here. So that's 2 sections of yellow. So I'm going to give you another star for the second section because you already had a star for the top one. Same thing for the green section. You already have one here that's 8 tenths. And the next green section is another 8 tenths. So that's another star if you label it like that. And the next green section is another 8. And there are tenths. So it's going to be 8 tenths, right? So the last thing we have is the blue section. And the blue section is a total of 45 little bitty squares, and those represent the hundreds. So it's 45 hundredths, and that's going to give you a star also. Okay, so now that we have all those parts labeled, all we got to do is put them together. We have to add them together. So hopefully, if you remember how to add decimals, you have lined up your decimal like this. And notice that 6 is a whole number, so it doesn't have a decimal, but we do need to have a decimal because it's kind of invisible. So let's go ahead and put a decimal there, fill in a 0 so we can have everything a number in the tenths place. And if you notice the very bottom number, the 45 hundredths, it's in the hundreds place. So every number actually has to be in the hundreds place. So if you set it up like this with adding that decimal on for the 6 for the whole number and the extra zeros, then go ahead and give yourself a star for setting it up correctly. And then we're actually going to add. So a bunch of zeros plus 5 is just a 5, and that is going to give you a star today. I think, yeah, there's a star. And now if we add the next column, it's going to be 3 eighths. So 8 times 3 is 24, plus the 4 on the bottom, that's 28, plus 5 and 5, which is 10. So 28 plus 10 gives you 38. So there's the 8, and that gives you a star. And then I'm going to put my decimal, bring it down, and I'm going to give you a star for that as well. And I'm going to carry the 3 on the top. So the 3 and the 6 give me a total of 9. And that's my final star for that answer. But I'm going to give you an extra star if you actually put it as part of your equation. So 9 and 85 hundredths is the last star for this math problem. And then we have the key idea, which is an equation must have an equal sign. And that's the star. Now if we count all the stars for this one, I'm going to circle them for you so you can see all the stars that we had. We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the regular 5 for the equation. And then we had all the modeled stars. We have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then we had 15 for the arithmetic, 16, 17, 18, 19 for the answer itself. And the key idea makes it 20. So there's 20 total stars for this problem today. Hopefully you got them all. Okay, this next problem is the division of algorithms. So the first number that we're going to put inside is always the first number listed, which is the dividend. So this case we're taking 3 and we're dividing it by 8. So that's like $3 divided amongst 8 friends or 8 people. And we know that we cannot give $1 to each person, a whole dollar. So we have to put a 0 on top of the 3. But by the way, give yourself a star if you put the numbers like this. A lot of people mess up on this problem because they have a small number and then a big number, and they always want to put the big number on the inside, and that's incorrect. The first number, when it's listed like this, is always going to be the one on the inside, the dividend, and then the second number is always going to be the number you're dividing by. That's your divisor, so that goes on the outside. Okay, but now we can go ahead and divide. So 8 cannot go into 3, so we're going to put a 0 there, and that gives you a star. Then we're going to have to put a decimal there, because remember, if this was like $3, you can write that as 3.00 for $3.00. Or you can just write it with regular $3 whole dollars. So it doesn't change the answer if we put a decimal there. So I'm going to give you a star for that. And if you brought up the decimal, I'll give you a star for that as well. Then we have a 0 for the next number that we have to fill in. So we can divide. So 30 divided by 8 is going to give, that extra 0 gives you a star. 30 divided by 8 is going to give you a number 3, because 8 times 3 is 24. So that star right there is for the 3 in the quotient. 8 times 3 is 24. And when you subtract 30 minus 24, you end up, if you regroup correctly, you end up with the number 6. And then that 6 is a remainder. So because we have a remainder, we must, well, I'm going to give you a star for that if you did that division, if that subtraction correctly. And because we have that remainder 6, we must add another 0 in our dividend so we can keep dividing. If you added that second 0, I'll give you a star as well for that. Bring down that 0, and that makes it 60 now. So 8 goes into 67 times. That gives you a star in the quotient, because 8 times 7 gives you 56. And if you subtract that, you end up with exactly 4 as your answer for your subtraction. Alright, so we also have to add another 0 since we have to have a remainder of 4. So that 0 gives you another star, and then you bring it down, you have 40. So what you have to do now is say how many times will 40 go, or 8 go into 40, and that's 5. That 5 gives you a star, and 8 times 5 is 40, so you subtract that and you end up with 0. And that gives you the last star for the division. So the key idea is going to be that we have to move the decimal point straight up into our quotient, and that's going to give you a star. But remember, if there is no decimal, you have to put it there. Okay, that's the trick on this question. And the total number of stars for this one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 stars for this question. Alright, the next one is multiplying decimals. So we're going to multiply decimals just like whole numbers. Forget about the decimal. If you set it up like this to begin with, you get a star. Remember, there is no decimal there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to multiply. 8 times 1 is 8, 8 times 1 is 8, and 8 times 1 is 8. Easy multiplication. So the first line should be 3/8, 888. Then we have to have a placeholder. That's going to give you a star. And then if you multiply by the second factor, the second number in your factor, which is a 9, 9 times 1 is 9, 9 times 1 is 9, and 9 times 1 is 9. So you have 9,990, and that gives you a star if you have that line. The next thing you have to do is add. So for that plus sign, you get a star because you're telling me what to do. And then we're going to add. 8 plus 0 is 8, that's a star. 8 plus 9 is 17, that's a star. Carry the 1. 1 plus 8 is 9, and 9 plus 9 is 18. So there's the 8, that's a star. Carry the 1. 1 plus 9 is 10. So my answer is 10,878. And you get a star for each digit. But don't forget we have a decimal, so we have to put it back into our factor, and we have to use our bubble strategy to put the decimal point in our product. So we're going to do that right now. We have two numbers behind the decimal, 2 digits, and that means that the first bubble is going to have a 2 inside of it. The second bubble is just a whole number for 98, so there is no decimal placement, so that means that there's going to be a 0 for that bubble. So the first bubble gets you a star if you have a 2, the second bubble you get a star if you have a 0, and the next bubble you have a 2 for the final answer. So you have to move the decimal twice, and that's going to give you a star for the little swoops, and you get the decimal between the 8 and the 7, and that's going to give you a star, final star. Key idea is to use the bubble strategy to place the decimal point in the product, and that's going to give you the final star. So let's count them. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stars for this question. For your reflection for today, you can use one of these two sentence stems. You can say, I am an expert at blank, and I need to work on blank. Or you can use the other one, which is, I noticed that blank, now I wonder blank. You choose one or the other one. You don't have to do both. And then if we add up all the stars that we had, the first problem was 6, the next one was 20, then 15, then 16, and you add them correctly if we use mental math. By the way, today's keyword is kangaroo. If you bring me the word, I'll give you some Bronco Bucks. Kangaroo. So if we're going to do mental math, we're going to change a 16 to a 15 because 15 and 15 are compatible. That gives me a 30. And 30 plus 20 is 50. So 6 more gives me 56. But remember how we changed that 16 to a 15? Well, we have to bring that 1 extra back to make it a 16 again. So that's going to give me a total of 57 instead of 56. And that's the total number of stars. Hope you had a good turnout. And if you didn't today, that's okay, because tomorrow you're going to be able to do better, especially with that model problem with multiplying decimals.